It's time for the Little Agency That Roars podcast, a podcast that connects you with talented and brilliant people. And that's all of us. We are available wherever you stream your podcast, so go ahead and find us and subscribe. I'm your host, Michael Fasone, and let's get started.
The other motherfucker we cannot figure out. He's crazy.
There we go.
He's cray-cray.
Cray.
Are you picking me up at all?
Yeah, you guys are good to go.
All right. So I'm sitting here with Loy Edge. Loy, how you doing?
Hello, Michael. Nice to see you.
It's great to see you. I'll be honest, I usually have notes, and I prepare a little bit beforehand, the night before.
Yeah.
For this, I have no idea where to start. There's so many starting points. There's so many talking points. And I almost feel like it would be an insult for me to lead you.
Oh, man. The history of this building. I'm going to start with just coming here to Fasone. And it's hard for me to, I always go back to Fasone Garrett. That's when I started. Well, actually, it was Reuter Fasone.
Right.
But that wonderful Fasone, I look and I see that logo and I remember it was my colleague Bob Ferguson. We did that calligraphy and it's still there. And you know what? It still looks great. But anyway, where to start, Michael? Man, this was where I first started in the advertising business.
How old were you?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 23.
How'd you end up here?
Well, there was a friend of mine named Evan James who worked with a guy named Larry Garrett on printing. Evan had James Printing Company.
Okay.
And he said, there's this guy Larry Garrett I work with at this little agency down in Westport. And he said, you really ought to talk to him about working with him. Well, I had just gotten started. I had a little studio down back in the back end of where Californios used to be. And it was a really, it was overgrown and there was a steel foundry back there. It was really hidden. Different from any place in Westport now.
Perfect for you.
Yeah, and so I went to see this guy, Larry Garrett, who is here at Reuter Fasone, and he agreed to let me work with him on some projects. Well, Garrett was a great writer and a really good guy, and so we started working with him on the Radisson Mulebog Hotel account, and that was really my first agency work, was with Larry. So yeah, this place brings back some great memories.
And let's talk about that logo. I thought you did that by yourself, but no, you worked on that with who, you said?
Well, I had a partner named Bob Ferguson from Memphis, and he was a Hallmark guy.
Right.
Several years older than me, but we met each other down at, probably the Happy Buzzard or something, down in Westport. And Bob was a really talented guy, and he really didn't like Hallmark. He kind of had it. He was bored. He was really a designer. And so I started very early renting a studio. Like I said, I was early 20s. And I really didn't have a whole lot of experience in graphic design, which is where I was starting out. So I thought it'd be smart for me to get somebody with a lot more experience and bring them in and sort of mentor me that way. So I brought Bob in, and Bob and I got busy. We started doing a lot of projects together, and he just quit going into Hallmark. He just kind of quit showing up. And it was such a big place that I don't think they even knew he wasn't there for a long time. So that's how we kind of launched it.
Okay.
Hallmark kind of helped us there.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. Well, they finally got wise to it, and they gave him well, we're going to get rid of you in a year if you don't, stop this. And Anyway, Bob and I went on to work together for many years. He's retired in Tennessee now.
That makes a lot of sense, Loy. And just so everybody listening is clear, it's the cursive, looks like a hand script Fasone font, because we have a few versions floating out there. And it was my understanding that you originally illustrated it, and then it had to go, because scanners didn't really exist in mass scale. Not everyone owned a scanner, but Hallmark had the only scanner. I don't know if it was in the Midwest or in this Kansas City region. And so you drew it, was my understanding. Then we had to be sent to Hallmark to digitized so that Michael, my father, could turn it into, a logo and a business card, etc.
I think one of the guys at Hallmark actually did the finished ink work on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because that's a real specialty thing, that kind of calligraphy.
Well, so
the design would be done by us. The finished art might be done by a calligrapher at Hallmark who was using all that technology too.
And when Carol and I took over the firm, yes, we obviously kept it. We changed it a little bit. There's some slight exaggerations to the S and the, I believe it's the F. I made some areas a little bit fatter and a little bit more augmented.
But a very distinctive F.
Oh, yes. Yes.
In fact, I think for a while that was really what. Oh yeah, there it is.
That's right on coasters coaster. Right there. Yeah, a friend of mine, Janet, was talking about those coasters yesterday.
Beautiful.
Remind me, I'll get you a set.
So I love seeing these remnants of the work from the 70s and 80s still around town, like just to see the F on the Fasone, even though it's it's been augmented a little bit, but it. I still see some of the other day I saw the Johnson County, I was driving out, and one of the Johnson County library branches had a sign still that I designed in probably 1979.
Oh, wow.
And it's a common feeling like, man, that was another world, another life. That was so long ago. And then it's also kind of gives you that hometown feeling of, man, this really is my hometown. I've been here a long time. And I love seeing that stuff it holds up pretty well, And I worked on that, I think, before I even started working with Fasone Garrett. I mean...
How long were you here?
In different capacities, off and on, probably... the relationship must have been, I don't know, 12, 15 years. I
just remember, I was a very young child.
Yeah.
Coming back to that side of the building, you with your combat boots, drawing me pictures, doing voices.
Probably smoking cigarettes.
Everyone was smoking cigarettes indoors.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seemed, my father was he was a copywriter.
Yeah.
He was not a designer.
Right.
Maybe a little bit of an art director, who knows.
Pretty good sensibilities in that area, yeah.
Yeah, very good. And a very good producer.
And music and all that other stuff, everything.
But as far as putting a pen to paper and doing it himself, and I kind of thought, I think you were his guy. For a long time, you put, still, as we're talking about, my logo is still your logo. You really put, you gave us our flavor in a lot of ways, you and Michael.
Yeah.
If I had to say, there's a
not dissimilar sense of humor. We did have your dad and I had, I think we got a kick out of a lot of the same stuff. And so there was that point of view in the stuff that we did, the party invitations and all those things.
Well, the anti-big agency.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And it was all kind of iconoclastic stuff. Mm-hmm. It had a cynical edge, but it was all in fun.
And it all served the client at the end of the day.
It did. And a lot of it really held up pretty well. I mean, I do, occasionally move every 7 to 8 years, it seems like, and I go through these old boxes and I reminisce about all these projects that we did when I was here with your dad, Mike, and with Garrett and other people that would come in who were account executives. And man, there's some great stuff.
Absolutely.
And that was just a different, I mean, I don't even think that industry really exists anymore. And what happens when you're with a small agency back then in the 80s and 90s is you invest a lot of effort building up these small clients organically. We had hotels, we had local hospital, local hotels, local banks, and they might even be regional. You really work hard to get in there and understand these clients and understand their customers, and you elevate that business until they get gobbled up by somebody from out of town, and then they take it all away, and you're standing there, in your skivvies. Mm-hmm. That happened constantly. We would work with a bank or work, or maybe it was a car dealership or whatever.
You did a lot of bank work early on, didn't you, here?
Yeah.
This agency did.
Yeah. And I think your dad made a decision early on that banks were too challenging as a client, mm-hmm. too unstable as a client because of a lot of that stuff. And they boost their budget or drop their budget on a whim whenever a new president would come in. Well, your dad realized car dealers were a much better account because they need you. Mm-hmm. They need your ad to put those people in that parking lot or in that car lot. And so that was he migrated to a lot of these smarter clients to have as an ad agency. And yeah, I was stuck with a lot of I love working with the banks. I love the people and all that. And I still work with banks. But it is not really what you'd call low-hanging fruit.
Right.
It's a challenge.
So here's how ingrained in the agency you are that you may not be aware of. So, you leave the agency and other people leave and he brings in new people, but there's still stories about Loy.
Uh-oh.
And I'm around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working for him at that point. Several people thought you were my uncle.
Really?
From the stories, from the tenure, from the way he would talk about you, from the way I would talk about you, they thought you were some relation there. They would call you Uncle Loy. And I'd have to remind them, no, there's no relation anywhere here except for my father. Well, we just thought, no. I mean, it's just.
Oh man, in at least in my day, that was a common practice. I had 5 or 6 uncles that weren't uncles.
Oh, okay.
It's just
okay.
It was just a term of endearment. So I'm honored that I was considered by some to be your uncle.
I was honored.
You're my really probably my only nephew, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Really, it means a lot. It means a lot to have you here in this office doing this show.
Well, I appreciate it. I kind of started off on a tangent there with the advertising business, which that may not even be what you want to talk about. I really don't know.
No, this show is a tangent. The whole show is a tangent. And really, I don't know if you listened to an episode, but
I have.
Then the intro, the first 15 seconds says it all. It's for beautiful and talented people, and that's all of us. And really, it's a chance for people to listen to other people who impact their local ecosystem. And that's you, definitely. It definitely impacted my personal culture. So it's a double whammy there for me. And also, we talked about campaigns. You talked about driving by JCCC and seeing their old sign that you did, and you get to see your work still. And I get to see that. Tim over here gets to see that, and that's fun. But as we all know, campaigns die. They don't die. Yeah. Campaigns have an end date. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, most of the time. And what I like about the podcast is the goal is in 60 years when, everyone is podcasting, someone's going to come across this interview. I'm gone, you're gone, Tim's gone, and hopefully they listen to it. And if they don't, who cares? At least we're having fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it. Hopefully they can gain some valuable insight from this conversation, and they can be like, well, they're flying around in their jet cars and they're going, that Loy Edge, he did that great library sign back in 1980.
Well, you've done a lot more than that, and we're going to get to that. But, you learn so much when there's an open format. We don't edit this podcast.
I love that.
I was telling Tim I had to use the restroom before. I was like, I hope I can use the restroom before. I said, otherwise you're going to have to talk to him. Not a big deal. But I'm very anti-editing because, again, in advertising, everything's edited. Mm-hmm. Everything's design, audio, video. It doesn't matter. We edit stuff down so that it's concise and easily digestible. This isn't going to be that way,
Well, it's... I do want to... since we don't edit, I don't want to forget. I want to talk about a campaign that your dad came up with that was so funny.
Go for it.
And we did it for years. And I look back on it as one of the best memories of my early advertising career. We were in a meeting in the conference room over here next door. And we were talking about Frank Ancona Honda. And your dad's like, he goes, I don't know what we're going to do. He goes, he's got a jillion of the damn things on the lot. And we looked at each other, and it's like, a jillion Hondas. So your dad bangs out this idea, and Frank Ancona had just built a new service lounge. And it was a state-of-the-art service lounge. And, back in the old days, service lounges were crappy. It was like going to the barber shop, 8-year-old magazines and, hard to find a good one like a Mad.
Yeah.
But Frank built this really nice one. So your dad got a kick out of my Frank Sinatra singing.
Okay.
Because I've always done these Sinatra knockoffs.
Really?
Yeah, and when I was doing voiceovers in L.A., I got stories about that. But I was a kind of a Sinatra sound-alike.
Okay.
So
I knew you were doing Bugs and Dad. Okay, we're going to get that. We're going to get there.
So your dad knew about this. He goes, I got this idea that you be the Frank Ancona service lounge singer. And did you ever hear about this campaign?
Yeah, you guys put a piano in the showroom.
So the guy across the street, Tom Potasica, he's still over there, owns the building with the Westport Coffee House, and Tom and Pam are still over there. And this was, had to be the mid-'80s. Had to be. Anyway, maybe late 80s. But it was a while ago. Where was I? We were talking. Oh, yeah. Tom plays the piano. And so Tom was going to be my accompanist on these commercials. So your dad would bang out something. He'd go, here, we got to do something about oil changes. We got an oil change special. And he'd say, we need something to do. So I think about the Sinatra songs, and I go, I've got you under my Honda, yeah. And so every spot had a bizarre Frank Sinatra, what was the one that was consistent was, who's that guy with a jillion Hondas? Hey, now, don't it make you want one? Frankie's got a jillion for you. Do you remember those?
I do.
1 jillion Hondas on his lot. That's what Frankie's got. I mean, I still remember this like it was yesterday. It was so much fun.
That's great.
And we did that for years. Mm-hmm. That campaign ran on and on. And God, some of them were so bizarre. And then your dad, of course, being an old school ad guy, he knew the power of remotes. So we would do a remote appearance, Tom and I. I'd have the sequin coat on and the sunglasses, and we had cassettes with all the commercials on it that I would sign when people would come to Frank Ancona Honda to look for their Hondas, they'd see the lounge lizard. We had the remote set up there. Loy Ho, that was my name.
Loy Ho.
And Tom was Fish Fingers. I don't know why.
Okay.
But it was a very long story. But anyway, people would come up and they'd get these autographed cassettes. I would sign them with really inappropriate things on them.
Like what?
Things like let's see. I'm single. Call me. Or is that your daughter? Just whatever would it be.
Right.
Just to the point where it wouldn't make people mad, but they'd laugh and they'd go, God, that guy's an a-hole, because I was the lounge singer. Hey, doll, what's it gonna take to get you in one of these Hondas, huh? But that, those were politically incorrect times.
Yeah.
That campaign wouldn't run
Good times. No, it wouldn't work, would it?
I still think it would, though.
It might.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Frank Ancona Honda's still out there, right?
I think he sold.
Did he?
I think so. Yeah. Well, his son Michael was running it for a while, then I think Michael sold it. So you're creative directing at Fasone for a while. Creative director? Or were you?
Associate creative director and it was your dad and Larry Garrett and me.
And then all I know is at some point, obviously I wasn't working here when you left, but I was always asking questions about my favorite Fasone people, because there was a small group.
Yeah, there were. Some good characters.
You had Lisa and Craig, who are major parts of my childhood in some ways, along with yourself. But anyway, my point is one day I hear Loy's moving to L.A. to be the voice of Bugs and Daffy when...
Well, close. Foghorn and Elmer, but...
Who was it?
Foghorn and Elmer. I mean...
Okay. And was that because the gentleman who was doing it passed, or they just needed more capacity?
Well, it's a bunch of people that do.
And then how do you get the job? A lot of questions.
Okay, a lot of people do these voices,
Okay.
these classic characters.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't one guy that does Bugs Bunny. There might be 7 or 8, and they audition for these roles. And there are certain gatekeepers in that community that kind of control who does what, and if it's a film production, one of the casting agents would work with most of those film people, and it was kind of a closed loop thing. But at the same time, there was a competitive aspect. Some people might not be available when this is being done. Some people might be sick, or that guy's out of the country, whatever. But there are several people that would compete for these roles. Well, I didn't know anything about that. I was still here.
So you didn't do voice work in Kansas City?
Just for
the
your
agency?
Dad, really, for the agency, for Fasone. In-house stuff, where it was something that was fun that I could do and I wanted to do, and it just would happen. I mean, it was... but it wasn't a formal thing.
Right.
And I produced a lot of stuff, so I worked with voice talent. But these guys that Bill Bigger and Dave DeRay worked with me at my studio, which I was still working with Fasone Garrett, but I was independent. I was over across the street. And they had worked with me, and they called me one day out of the blue. They were out in L.A., and they called me and said, "You need to come out here and audition for these classic characters. They're Kid Rhino Records. Warner Kid Rhino is doing a project, and they need these voices." And I said, "Well, how could I do that?" I go, "I'm not really." And they go, No. Here's the deal. They've been auditioning people, and they can't find anybody who can do the chicken as well as you do. He goes, Dave was in the, casting, and he said, they haven't found anybody they like, and they're not as good as you are at it. Well, this is just from me screwing around doing, listen, boy, that kind of stuff. All right, so I went to Wheeler Audio. I slapped together a bunch of little character voices on a cassette, mailed it with stamps, sent it out there. And this is fast action in those days.
Right. And waited.
Yeah. And then they called me and said, hey, they really liked this. They want you to come out and audition for it. And pre-digital, all that stuff, you get in a car and drive to the airport. And so I said, okay. I went out there, auditioned for the Foghorn and Elmer and some other things, and got those two characters. I didn't even know I was going to audition for Elmer. So those got booked, and I had no idea what I was doing. I had to show up now at the gig, and I'm in this room with all these seasoned veterans who are all the characters, bringing all the characters to life, right?
Oh, wow.
So it's just like you grab some guy off the street playing hoops and go here and throw him into an NBA game, I mean, it was...
That'd be awesome.
Oh, it was scary.
Yeah, I mean, terrifying.
Because, doing a voice characterization is one thing, but then having to act and interact with other character actors who are doing the voices is a whole different level. Mm-hmm. Well, I wasn't blind. I had directed some stuff before, so I knew it was not going to be a walk in the park. But when I got in there, and there were like 5 or 6 of them, and microphones were all kind of in a circle, and we're bouncing off each other, and Bugs and Daffy and the Tweety Bird's over here, and and it's just going around the room, and then you're getting fed your lines, and you got to come back in character, and it was fun, and it wasn't that hard, but the pressure was intense, because if you screw up, you're kind of screwing everybody up. Mm-hmm. And these people have been at it a long time, so that was a trial by fire.
And you probably don't get a lot of quote-unquote screw-ups, do you? Or do you? I mean, if you hold up that production process back then...
Fortunately, I didn't find that. I never found that out, because I didn't screw up that badly. You don't know that until afterward. You don't get a lot of feedback.
Okay.
Especially when you're in a group performance like that. There's no time for that. It's like... Well, you're all pros. You all know what you're doing, so let's go. And I wanted to hold my hand up and go, wait, not me. So anyway, I did this project. I've been out there for a couple of weeks. I'm hanging out with some KC guys. Ed Kerr, who's an actor, Edward Kerr. He's been out there for years. A great guy, friend of mine. One of the well-known real estate families, siblings. And Billy Bigger and DeRay and all these people. And they're trying to get me to stay out there. And I think it's because they wanted a drinking buddy, They wanted another drinking buddy out there. But there's this whole press on, Loy, you got your SAG card. You got William Morris Agency. You've been out here for 2 weeks. You got to stay. And I'm like, well, why? And they go, because people spend years trying to get this stuff done. So they talked me into it, right? And it was 11 years doing that. So
that's a long time.
Yeah, it was an 11-year trip to
What did
LA.
You do for those 11?
What did I do? Mostly voiceover out there. I lived out in mid-Wilshire, La Brea and Wilshire, for people who know LA at all. I was kind of in the nice part of town. It was centralized. And I worked, I had William Morris Agency, a great agent, Eric C. Strand. who I've worked with now for 22 years.
They still rep you?
He does.
He does?
Now, William Morris Agency, became William Morris Endeavor. They shut down their voiceover department recently during the COVID thing.
Okay.
They only represent certain very high-profile
Gotcha.
celebrities. I didn't fall into that category. Yeah. Anyway, that was the situation out there. And then I worked for Warner Brothers on the lot for Kids WB Network as a writer-producer of network promos. So I wrote and produced kids show promos.
For what network?
For the WB network.
Oh, you just said that. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
That's all right. I don't think it's still around. I think it's a different name now, but that was a really fun gig, and that was because Bill Bigger, the guy from Kansas City, the late William Bigger, he was a writer producer there, and said, "I'm going on vacation. If you want, I can bring my friend Loy in, and he can try this." And they did it. I mean, it was so weird.
That's cool.
It was, and went on to just write and produce a whole bunch of those. Of course, the downside of that job was I had to watch Pokemon and all this. I mean, I had to watch every episode of this really
Got to know your demo.
less than,
Know your demo.
I mean, you talk about I'm not used to having to eat the sausage, when I'm making the sausage. But I had to sit there and eat a lot of sausage because I had to pull cuts out of these horrible, to a middle-aged guy,
Right.
horrible cartoons. I'm sure somebody likes those things, but it was a nice, fun place to work on the Warner Ranch. You could walk around and there'd be like, oh, there's Fantasy Island. That's where they, it'd be a little patch in the parking lot where they had fake trees and stuff.
The Jaws pool. And
Yeah, it's just the friend's house, whatever. There's the fountain, and then we'd work in these big trailers, and that was kind of fun. That was a different scene. Definitely an LA thing. You're not going to find those kind of gigs.
And that seems like a lot. That's a longer day than voice work, it sounds like.
That was a nighttime gig.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did the night shift. So they'd keep those edit bays going.
24 hours?
Well,
I mean,
in my case, I'd put in a very hard 20-hour week.
Okay.
Because you just do, it was a hurry up and slow down thing.
Okay.
So you'd go in and you'd work on your projects. They'd hand you weekly. You'd have these promotional projects that you needed to do, interstitials or, bumpers or whatever, and you had to do all these different projects. Well, if you knocked them out real quick, you were done.
You're done. Gotcha. Okay.
And so, yeah, it was a great gig in a lot of ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the voiceover work, Loy, because you were doing more than just character animation. Or
Oh, yeah.
or character voices.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever the correct term was. What else were you doing?
Well, when you go to New York or L.A. in the voiceover world and you're from Kansas or Missouri, to them you are everything from a hillbilly to a Minnesotan. You fall into this huge category of Midwestern voices. So you're very busy doing characters or accents. If they want a real read, an American guy selling trucks or something like that, we can't get all those. And so you wind up doing all these different characters from hillbillies because they just think, well, let Loy do it. He's from Kansas or whatever. So you get a lot of action. And I have friends out there that are still, they're Midwestern guys, and I still hear them out there doing the stuff constantly. So there are these regular announcer reads for kind of a voice of authority, things like that were in my wheelhouse. I was very much still a what would you call it, kind of a player across the whole spectrum, utility player, I guess you'd say. So I'm doing dialects, I'm singing, I had a lot of singing gigs that were little commercial things. Not so much jingles, but singing in character, going all the way back to that Frank Ancona Honda thing. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've had the stories about that are really, really weird. Like I did the opening song for a little show called The Apprentice.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm out there, and maybe I've been out in L.A. for a couple of years. It's like 2002 or something. And this buddy calls up and says, Loy, Graham Horde, the drummer for Tom Jones, is a producer. And he's got this project for this new television show. It's got Donald Trump in it. And he kind of gave me the little rundown. Donald Trump brings these people in, and da-da-da. And I go, okay. Well, they don't like the singer, and Trump doesn't like it, and it's a gal, and it's not the right. Would you do the lounge singer on this thing? It's kind of a Sinatra type thing. I said, sure. So I go over to this guy's house, and we lay down this original piece that was composed for The Apprentice, and it was called Hey Jump. And it was kind of a swing, hey jump Donald Trump, this kind of thing, yeah. Anyway, so we laid this down, and then they brought Sinatra's actual horn section that was still around, and they got them to do the studio music behind it, and it was a very high production.
Wow.
And so I put a cassette together on this thing explaining, just when he told me the idea of the show, I thought, I put things together like little bumpers that I would do.
Okay.
From my vision of what the show might be like. Mm-hmm. Well, I did a series of them called You're Fired. Bumpers that were kind of mocking the transition when somebody didn't make it, and I called it You're Fired. Well, they may have come up with that at the same time.
No.
I have no idea, but I mailed that cassette in, and, in those days, you didn't get like multiple digital copies. You mailed the cassette in. Uh-huh. So goodbye. But anyway, so they signed a contract for this music and for my singing and for these guys' composition. And Burnett and Trump signed off on it. So they had a big celebratory party. They had Cristal champagne and Cuban cigars and all this, and they were all excited about it. And I was guardedly optimistic, despite all these people coming up going, Trump loves this. Burnett loves it. Trump wants you to perform it live on The Tonight Show when he's out promoting the show. So Trump wants you to open for him with this song. And I'm like, okay, well, that'd be great. Of course, no idea this show's going to run for, 15 years? I have no idea. But anyway, I'm waiting for this show to come on, and I don't hear anything. And then when they run it, the OJs are on there. Money, 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 money. And it's like, that isn't good. Well, what happened was I got two different stories. Even though there was a contract, somebody at NBC or one of the advertisers killed the song because they didn't like it.
But you're already there on set to perform that song?
No, we never performed it live. We recorded it for the show.
Okay.
But the story was Trump's so enamored with this that he wants you to come on and intro. Okay, well that never happened because the song was never used on the show. So even though Trump and Burnett apparently loved the song, somebody at NBC or one of the advertisers, somebody on the money end didn't like it. And so they replaced it at the last minute. Wow. So that was one of my singing tragedy stories. I had quite a few of those.
But it sounds like they found another use for some of your bumpers.
You just
sounds like we're not going to use this song, but you know what? This idea transitions awfully well to when he meets one-on-one with his.
Maybe so. One never knows. But you know what? That's all right.
We've all done design work or script work and seen it done by another.
That's right.
Well, looks like they stole that MPEG or JPEG.
That's right. That's right.
It happens.
That's right. I did another singing thing for one of the. I can't even remember the name of the big arthritis medicine that they pulled it off the shelves because it caused some kind of heart thing. I don't.
Okay.
I just finished a national campaign and I was singing a country western song about this pain relief medication, and it ran for one day and they pulled the medicine.
Wow, that stinks.
Bad luck with the singing thing.
That stinks.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, it was everything. Singing and dialects and cartoons, a lot of anime, those cheesy Japanese cartoons, and I will show you, oh, young man. You just, okay. It's like you're five characters on this one. Okay. You're the old Chinese man. You're the young warrior.
And the teenage girl.
Yeah.
Did you do design work out there too, or just?
Yeah, I just not a lot because that takes some space for me, physical space.
Okay.
To really do it, and L.A. it's damned expensive. I had limited space, small apartment out there. It's funny because the rent on a studio apartment when I came back was the same in a decent neighborhood, on a par with Westwood, was the same as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, full basement, fenced-in yard house in Westwood.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah. And what's it now?
It's the same.
Oh, it is?
I mean, that relationship, it's just like, it's still, whatever that studio is what that 3-bedroom in Westwood is.
Right. Yeah, right. It scales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, that was another thing, is it's awfully seductive to have a decent place to live. And in L.A., that's hard. Mm-hmm. You'd have to work your butt off to keep up with all the taxes.
Well, they're selling 600 square feet for $2 million, on average, if it's in the prime area.
And they really look like dumps. I'm telling
you.
I mean, compared to the housing stock you're used to in a city like Kansas City, you go out there and you're like, that's barely above a cracker box.
Mm-hmm. But the weather's perfect every day. And
every day.
You're hardly in that cracker box anyway.
That's right. And the breeze that runs through that cracker box as soon as the sun goes down, and it's just 72 degrees, and the breeze comes in.
I had family in L.A. growing up. My mother's sister raised her boys there. And so they were in Toluca.
Oh, yeah.
And then when I think high schools changed, got out of Toluca so they could get into the right high school and then moved to Doheny in Beverly. the top of Beverly.
Oh, yeah.
Doheny.
They had some nice neighborhoods there. Toluca apparently was the site selected by, I believe, Crosby and Hope. That was based on where the breezes come through the mountains, and that was the ideal location for that cool breeze was Toluca.
A lot of movies were shot there. Mm-hmm. Fatal Attraction, I think 2 of the scenes were shot in my aunt's house at the time.
Really?
Yeah, 2 of the scenes. I don't know which 2, but anyway, neat area, But I stopped going there, mid-teens or something when cousins split off and whatnot. But it's just going there as a child. There's all these people on the street during the day in Los Angeles, and you don't have that in the Midwest because we're working or we're doing something at least. But they're just like 50 people at 10 a.m. or 1:30 or 3:30, just sitting having coffee. It's like, don't you guys work?
Oh yeah, and looking at that from a bar restaurant,
and some of them are working.
Yeah, from a bar restaurant owner's perspective, I'd look at the potential for traffic and foot traffic and how people could be outside every damn day using that patio, and I'd go, why do we even bother here? Why do we even set up the umbrellas and staff it up with people who are probably going to leave you high and dry in 2 weeks? I mean, why do we even bother? Because
it's what we love to do.
And there it is around people outside all the time. That's true. I do love that about it. Of course, it's, that doesn't help the inside though. The insides of the place. They're great here. The atmosphere. In LA, it's the trendiness can get a little out of control.
Mm-hmm. Let's stay here because you come back to Kansas City and then famously open a restaurant in one of the most popular areas of our city, the Country Club Plaza, and you don't give it a name.
That's right.
And it's known as the No Name Bar because the bar didn't have a name.
That's right.
It was the old, or it's the current, can you help me, Loy, with what that current space is? Is it a jewelry store?
No, it's empty now, I believe.
Okay.
But it became Reverse.
That's right, Reverse.
It
was the corner, right?
Yeah.
On Brush Creek and not Jefferson.
I don't remember.
Doesn't matter.
But it's the first one as you're coming in from the Kansas side. It's the first place you see.
So you open that. You don't have a name. Did you know you weren't going to have a name? It was a big thing that you didn't have a name. You got a lot of publicity because of it. Publicity.
Yeah.
It really worked out. It seemed like it worked out.
It just seemed, number one, it was kind of a dada move, It was going against the grain, iconoclastic, to refuse to name it. On the liquor license, they would say, you have to have a name. And so I'd said, okay, N/A. So that was the name on the liquor license, not applicable. Mm-hmm. So I still evaded naming the place. And then, J.C. Nichols, they were kind of a conservative. They're like, what the hell are you doing? But what goes in the slot? I mean, I said, I don't care. You can write whatever you want to in there. It doesn't have a name. And then we had a lot of fun with Lou Jane Temple had a lot of actor friends. And she was consulting with me. And so we staged a fake protest on the street because all these people were pissed that I wasn't giving it a name. And I thought, well, I'm going to have some fun with this. So I gave them all signs that said, mad at Loy for no name. We demand a name. And we won't drink here until there's a name. Gave all these actors these signs, and they set up a giant boycott on the plaza there. And, this must stop, and so
we won't drink until they have a name.
Yeah, and this was like typical. This was the kind of stuff like your dad, Pat O'Neill, and I would pull all the time to create publicity. And the TV station showed up and interviewed it, but so that was fun. We did get some attention from that, and then later on, William Burroughs, the beat writer, William S. Burroughs, who was a friend of mine, agreed that he was going to, that I said, I'm going to have William name it. And he agreed to do that. And so I had some of William's artwork up in the place, and I thought, well, this will be fun. We'll have William S. Burroughs, the great William S. Burroughs, name the place. And I was supposed to go over to his house for dinner. Well, I got sick. I got a cold or the flu, and I called up and said, I'm having somebody send food down there to Lawrence to you guys because I can't come because I don't want to get William sick, and so I missed the dinner, and then his cat died, and I called him, and he was despondent. And he died. And I really think it had a lot to do with that, but he passed away before I had a chance to get together with him for him to name it.
Oh, wow.
And, it's like, that was fun. He was going to enjoy it. I was going to get a kick out of it. More publicity. Mm-hmm. That was another angle. I mean, in those days, there was a media that was hungry for stories, and that kind of PR. I mean, now if you did it, what happens? Nobody's watching the TV stations. Nobody's watching nobody's reading the papers anymore. There isn't really that same opportunity.
Well, there is. You would just have to spread the effort across 5 platforms.
Oh, yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, the news,
But who's going to show up to record it?
Right.
I mean, you got to push it all out.
Sure.
I mean, in those days, it's like, we'll be there to, we'll be there to film at 11. Uh-huh. What kind of crazy shit are you guys doing? We'll be there.
How can we egg them on? Yeah. You still have art in Westport, don't you? You have art in Harry's Bars and Tables.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You have amazing art in Harry's Bars and Tables. You have that Sinatra portrait with one for my baby and one for the road lyrics around the border. Isn't that right? It's a portrait of Frank Sinatra sitting at a bar by himself.
Yeah.
And on the edge of the canvas, you wrote either all or part of the lyrics to one for my baby and one for the road.
Yeah, I cannot remember exactly what those lyrics are that go around the painting, but yeah, I mean that was a long time ago.
Set 'em up, Joe. I got another story I think you should know.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah, it's a sad tale. I think I should tell.
All right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I got one of Bukowski up there on the stairwell. He's pulling on a beer, and he's like, if you're going up the stairwell, Bukowski, and then the corner one, is the atomic nuclear family.
The nuclear family. I love that. That is so amazing. Do you still draw?
Yeah,
for yourself?
Not much. Right now, I don't have time. That's one of those things that I'll fall into it and out of it, depending upon what else is going on in my world.
How did those paintings get in Harry's? Did you used to have an ownership or any type of involvement with Harry's?
Yeah, I actually built it.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, it was my place. Yeah.
You started it?
Yeah.
What year was that?
mid-late 80s, I think. I'm not really good with pinpointing the years.
Yeah.
Maybe 87, I don't know.
So that was all you then, Loy?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob Reagan and I had already sold the Buzzard. I opened the Buzzard when I was 27.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, that's another weird tangent. Talk about tangents.
Go for it.
Well, I DJ'd in a disco called Instant Replay West back in the 70s. People, 75th and Metcalf. And I started bartending. And the minute I turned 21, I headed down to Westport. Don't ask me why, pure coincidence. Had nothing to do with the hooch. But there I was, down there in Westport, living up above Torrey's, I think. Yeah. And I was bartending at the Happy Buzzard. And then the Happy Buzzard closed. And then I opened my little art studio back in the back, down there in California. And the Buzzard changed to Medicine Man's. It was short-lived. It had a logo with a dancing medicine man with a squirting syringe in his hand. I don't know. It didn't really resonate.
Yeah.
And then Coach Culver from Rockhurst and his sons came in, and they opened it as Culver's Sideline, which is even. I'm a voiceover guy. It's hard for me to say that. It just doesn't flow, Culver's Sideline. Anyway. That didn't pan out, and it closed for quite a while. It was abandoned. Billy Nigro, Torrey's Pizza, and great Westport character, great guy. We talked Jean Dickinson, the landlady, into letting us open at one St. Patrick's Day. So we stocked it up and opened it for one day on St. Patrick's Day, and we killed it. We just killed it. And then, so we got a special catering license, to open it. I said, you know what, I really need to open this thing. We got another partner involved, and he backed out at the last minute. Essentially locked himself in his closet and wouldn't come out. We were young. He got cold feet on it. So I called my buddy Bob Reagan, Charlie Hooper's. And Bob and I had worked together when I was a cabana boy at Woodside. Anyway, he came in and we built the Buzzard Beach for pocket change. I mean, nothing, but we re-buzzardized it. It was a re-buzzardization project. One of the first re-buzzardization projects in the United States. And bam, it was just right. Everybody came right back and said, Buzzard's back, and had a little bit tweak with the beach concept, but we had a lot of luck finding people with big stuffed fish and crap like that, and there you go.
How and why do you get out of that then? How and why do you leave that?
Oh, well, it's a 3 a.m. place. It was really a sideline for me.
Okay.
And I get bored. I can't control myself in those environments for hours on end. It's too much like retail, It's like, and I would have to drink it interesting. Yeah, that's not very healthy.
I understand.
Because when you're trying to work days and you're like, well, yeah, I hung around and kept an eye on things, had 12 drinks, and I had to get up and do a design project. So that became hard. And Westport is always really chaotic.
No.
And the ownership changes of everything, and half of the owners are crazy.
What?
Who have inherited properties and things, and they're nuts. Oh, I don't know. Present company excluded. And so you never knew if your parking lot was going to get paved over next week or if it was going to become, a three-tier office building. It's like...
Tim has a lot of good parking lot stories. Sorry, I'm laughing so hard. Sorry, Tim's had a hell of a year in this parking lot.
This was one of my parking lots for a while.
What do you mean for your...
I had to do a sublease with your dad.
This is everyone's parking lot.
For, like 11 spaces to get a liquor license.
Oh, okay.
And so I had to give your dad a stack of buzzard bucks every month.
We still, yeah.
And everybody from Fasone and Garrett would come down to the buzzard like locusts and just like boom. And then there's a buzzard bucks, 2 buzzard bucks for a drink, 1 for a beer.
We were photocopying those 10 years ago, by the way.
No!
Yeah.
I knew it.
Are they remodeling?
I believe they are,
They're going to reopen, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Kansas City, Missouri...
I said that.
It's always a struggle.
Someone doesn't know. There was a fire in the buzzard.
That's right.
It affected the kitchen and the bar, and I think the place next door, and they're trying to figure out when and if and how they're going to reopen it. You doing okay on time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I was just moving it around. No, they're coming back. I think it's a lot of compliance issues and regulatory approval.
I had no idea you started the buzzard. I knew you had a hand in Harry's somehow. I probably knew you built Harry's. That one's on me. I had no idea about buzzard. Your footprint in Kansas City, let alone Westport, is enormous.
Well,
people don't know that, and that's why you're here.
Well, I appreciate that.
And if you haven't seen the artwork in Harry's Bars and Tables, you need to go look at it. It's some of my favorite artwork, aside from the art that I buy that I collect on my own.
Well, I appreciate that. The nuclear extended family has been in the sun for 20 years, and the fun thing about that is, as it bleaches out and as it frays, the image becomes more and more post-nuclear. And it's really, I first saw it and I thought, oh my God, that's really getting bleached out and beaten up. And then the more I looked at it, I thought, that's really appropriate, man. I can feel that nuclear blast.
Yeah. However, I would love to have seen that when it was fresh.
I got photos of it.
Do you?
Yeah.
The Sinatra one, thank God, is hanging on the side of Pennsylvania side. Mm-hmm. So there's no light hitting it. I'm very, I don't want to say, don't use my words carefully on this.
There's a lot of original paintings
show.
In
yeah, it is.
studio.
My point is I'm very careful about what I let it be exposed to light.
Oh, yeah.
For example, I'm waiting on 2 pieces to come back. I just called the frame store Monday, in fact, because they're running a little late, but everything's late these days with lag times. And anyway, long story short, I have 4 pieces from a woman in Sweden who I collect from, and I don't let those get anywhere near. And I know she uses quality materials, but I still don't want them to get anywhere near light.
Oh, yeah. Light will get them all.
Yeah. This man's very talented. His name's Nathan Klein.
Yeah.
He's done everything in here with the exception of those prints, that print, and, of course, the skateboard.
Should you call that constructivist?
Abstract.
Abstract.
He's really, really, really cool. He has a really nice heart, too. I need to get him on here. I think I sent him a text to get him on here. He teaches a class at KCAI. He also does a lot of non-for-profit work for the city.
Yeah, there are a lot of nice themes. There's a drinking devil with a beer belly. I like that. There's a fascist pig with a rocket launcher.
So, well, wait a minute.
No, I'm not.
Why does he have
critical.
to be fascist?
Because it's pig.
Okay.
And he's giving a salute. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's a grenade.
This is. He names all of his paintings.
Cornered again
by my impeccable plans.
All
you
right.
said drinking. On that one is called Sweet Bends Over and Pours Out Bitter.
Huh.
This. Bear with me, that can be crooked. This one's called To Take It, You Would Take It. Let's see, is it you or Oh, yeah, you would take a penny out of beggar's cup. That is a stringy line of gibberish. I love the way he names his paintings.
Yeah.
I recently traded that one for another one of his. I had a painting of his called What Are Those Strange Drops of Blood Doing on Jennifer's Body? And I loved the title. And at the time, I was dating a girl named Jennifer. But the canvas wasn't right angled.
I hope nothing happens to her.
Who?
Jennifer.
Why?
No, because you'll have a hell of a time explaining that. But go ahead.
Oh, Jesus, Loy. Thanks. Anyway, I traded him the painting because of the angles. Okay, I'm going to stop there.
It's nice that you appreciate art. You get that from, maybe from your dad.
I don't know. I mean, I was
Maybe
around.
from hanging around here. There was a lot of it going on.
I was around art a lot. Mm-hmm. You know, growing up, I was around artful people a lot, like yourself. And again, at a very young age. And I, too, was an illustrator at a young age, you know, and in front of the camera at a young age, doing promo work for St. Luke's, I did the very first Mr. Good Sense commercial, you know. I did talent when I was young, and then I became too cool to do talent, you know, 14 to 16 when driver's licenses and that type of thing kicks in. And
it's funny, I directed a Mr. Good Sense commercial with a young man who was probably about 14. It wasn't you.
At Metro?
I don't remember where we directed it, but he was a tall kid with glasses. It wasn't you.
Nah, I'm not tall.
But I do remember him yelling at me. Kid didn't like me, didn't like my directing.
Okay, how'd that go?
I kicked his ass. You know, back then you could do that. It was like, you're going to thank me later for this, kid. You got a bad attitude. I'm going to do what your father should have done. No, I didn't do that. The stage mother was there. I had to grin and bear it.
And I want to, while we're doing, while we're here on time, let's talk about that, because I want your opinion on where specifically voiceover work has gone. You know, you can order voices online now.
Yeah.
$35.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I didn't love the idea. There's a time and a place for it. And in conjunction, more and more, and thanks to, you know, the last 3 years, COVID, more and more voiceover actors are preferring to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Opinion? Thoughts?
Well, it's been a cycle of, you know, a lot of it is the same cycle that digitization has done to every industry. And I've unfortunately been able to ride through all these transitions. For example, when I started as a designer and an art director, it was T-squares and X-Acto blades and spray mount and large tables and sending out type and marking it up. And then all of a sudden, the desktop publishing world starts, and Apple and all this stuff. And people are now able to generate fonts in different sizes and control those fonts on these computer programs. And even though I would say 95% of the art directors and designers didn't really have the capability to be font, to be typography. Mm-hmm. I happened, because of my relationship with Bob from Hallmark, typographical design was one of his strong suits, so we were very typographically inclined as an agency. So we saw this crap coming out, even from big agencies and big design studios, where they were cutting out all the typesetters and doing it in-house, but they really didn't have the nuance. They didn't know what they were doing. So there was this long process of kind of a sloppy democratization of the process, where everybody with a computer was suddenly a typographer, but they weren't.
Okay.
So there was a lot of inconsistency in the quality. And there was a lot of, because people were saving a fortune and they didn't really know where the value added was that they were paying for, because they weren't, it was like a cargo cult, you know. They saw things and they looked good and they thought, well, I can do that, and because, you know, it kind of looks like that. Well, anyway, there's a big learning curve for all of that society when these kind of technologies come in place. Eventually, designers started designing again, and a lot of the businesses got wiped out. There was no longer a need for type houses or photostat houses, a whole lot of changes in the industry, and everything came full circle, and it took 25 years, 30 years, but now designers are designing type again. And so voiceover world has gone through a similar thing where there was a small universe of voiceover actors. They were all union. They were all in the major markets, L.A., Chicago, New York, maybe Dallas, some Minneapolis and Kansas City were like secondary markets, and a few others. And there were casting agents, casting directors, and talent agents, and it was a small loop of people. And they all had, you know, the agents all knew what everybody did. They all had a good feel for, you know, what kind of characters they did, what kind of reads they could produce. And they might call in 12 people from, they call in a couple from William Morris, a couple from Abrams, a couple from Creative, all the agencies, you know, and they'd read the top 12 people and they'd pick one. Well, all that started changing with digital recording. Now, well, why not get more? And why not get more? And pretty soon, hundreds of people were auditioning, and you knew damn well that only a handful of those were being listened to before somebody went, I like that one. And then all the rest of them are just in the trash. So people driving all across L.A. and New York to record these things, and some of them, that's the only thing they were doing that day, so they drove 20 miles to go record that audition, and it wound up just in the trash.
Right.
So it was a broken industry for a long time. It was a broken model. And there was a strike that hurried things up in the SAG-AFTRA world in 2000, I believe it was, 2001, right around in there. They had a strike. It was a writer's strike and a director's strike, I think, but it forced everybody to go to non-union talent. At the same time, the internet had just gotten critical mass. So it was the question of, oh, gee, where will we ever find anybody to do this now that we are locked out from union talent because of the strike? Where will we ever find anybody to do this? Oh, let's hit this button. Oh, look, 5,000 people will do it, and they'll do it for a song, and we don't have to track anything, and we don't have to pay, you know, usage and all this stuff. So that started crumbling. That
timing. What timing?
Timing was bad.
Jeez.
So when I got out there, I was actually there at the very end of the salad days. I mean, I was there at the very end of the golden era. Everything started going down from 2000 in that industry. And so now you have a real, there are a lot of celebrity voices, a very small handful of go-to iconic voices. Great, you know, you've always got 20 or 30 standouts in each sex and age group and all that. They work still, and there's much less union work of that scale, impact that there was when I went out there. It's way, way different. A lot of the agencies closed down their department, their voiceover department. it's still an industry, but it's just completely changed. And now I have no idea how much, but I would say the vast majority of projects are cast over the internet independently with talent, and not going through the agencies, things like that. I don't know if that. I don't even remember what the question was, but
No, that you did a perfect job migration of voiceover actors and actresses, peoples into online realms, online sites. I don't want to say the sites by the URL,
right.
but there's several out there where you can just.
Yeah,
I can listen to Loy Edge. Oh, okay, he does this character. Email the site. Hey, I want Mr. Edge, and I want him to do just like he did on take, just like he did at the 30-second mark on his demo, and he needs to come in at 26 and a half seconds.
and that's all good
And I need
stuff.
it by the end of the day.
And that's all so different. And the same thing with the digital graphics world. It's so turnaround. It's so different. It's big obvious advantages. There are some disadvantages.
Yeah.
But
There's a major disadvantage as a producer, director, to not be able to direct your talent.
I would agree with that.
Now, having said that, you don't give those types of jobs to those types of vendors, if you will, because you want to direct your talent. But if it's, if it's an ad where Mr. So-and-so at that one company can do it because he's been doing it for everybody else, and he's been doing it for me too, well, then it makes sense, and it's economical, and why not? But yeah, I mean, we're doing a hybrid mix. Some of our stuff is in studio, some is over Skype or Zoom, some is just strictly email. I was curious to hear your take on that. It's really interesting to hear you align the union strike with and it makes perfect sense, with the emergence of the internet becoming so dominant.
Well,
And these sites saying here, well, I got 40
it's
people.
difficult because complexity, what I call the complexity industry, always settles into anything that involves multiple authority or compliance groups. Like if you've got an agent and you've got a union and you've got a client and you've got a client agency and you've got a agency's client and you've got all these people. Now you've got this kind of collaborative effort going on, and there's a lot of false authority that flies back and forth. Opinions, passive aggressive behaviors, and all these things that go into these processes. Well, pretty soon it builds up scales, and the process becomes so bogged down by all these different little chaotic, things where you have to, the union regulations are this, but the agency demands this, and the client demands this, and pretty soon it gets to the point of diminishing returns. And that's what happened. Is I believe that the system got caught with its pants down, and the internet came in and said, one button, one deal, no hassle. It was the Uber thing. It's like, before Uber, you had to call, hope that a cab company would answer an hour before.
Hope they show up.
And then they would tell you, your cab will be there between 10 and 40 minutes. Please sit in the window like a cat.
Stand outside.
But they got caught with their britches down. It's like, one little call, one button, there's my limo. Same thing happened in this world. So
Makes sense. And it really hurts the negotiation on the agency side in talent, because they know sometimes they're negotiating against, if they say the wrong number, well, then I'm off online.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because sometimes it does come down to budget.
Yeah, and that's why I think the agents mostly have focused on celebrity talent, because that's a different process. I want Michael Fasone. Okay. His agent said you can have him for $20,000.
Yeah, Will Arnett. He's all over the place. I once heard, I was watching an interview with another actor, and the interviewee had asked them, I'm sure you've interviewed for The Simpsons. And this is like an A-list actor. I think it was a female, and she was like, oh, God, no. She goes, to get in that show, you got to be. And the interviewer was even shocked. He's like, even you don't get a seat at that table? It's like, oh, no. You don't get a seat at that table unless you're, whatever. I mean,
Well, there is this Praetorian Guard. So with every desirable, like I was talking about the Warner characters, there are the tastemakers, the gatekeepers. There are these people that kind of manage who gets in that door.
Can you talk about that?
I just did.
Okay. Good job. Well done.
I talked about it. I drive-by talked about it.
Well done.
No, I will only talk deeper after they're all deceased, or I am, and that's going to be a hard interview.
Peace.
But that's what they do. They, Hollywood does not get that whole reputation just accidentally of being a political minefield.
Everything's politics in some way or another.
True that.
Loy, what are you doing nowadays?
Well, the parts I can talk about, I'm working on a concept for a client who shall remain unnamed for an alternative type of beverage bar in Florida.
Nice.
And it's going to be a groundbreaking concept, working on developing the concept and the culture and the positioning and helping with the location search and working on some new products in the CBD realm.
Fun.
Working on a project with a local bank, not a local bank anymore, but a bank that you're acquainted with, and going around right now the state of Missouri, helping smaller communities identify how they can create regional amenitization, how they can work together with 2 or 3 small communities to create a complete package of accessible amenities that someone like you or I might demand if we move to a small town after having grown up in the type of urban environment where we have access to everything. Some of us would never move to a town the size of like Marshall, Missouri, if it didn't have a decent 18-hole golf course.
Right.
I couldn't. It'd be like, no, I don't care how nice it is. In other words, and a lot of people need a nice hospital. They need accessibility to all these things. So I'm working with a whole team of other marketing people or people who have affinity towards small towns in the state of Missouri to start with, and some in Kansas, to strategically help them position their area, their region, to offer a package and help promote them in major metro areas like Kansas City, St. Louis, and Wichita, to attract either part-time or full-time new residents and new industries. Because I think there's going to be, what started this was, I see a mega trend. Cities, I hate to break this to everybody, cities ain't going to get a lot better in the near future. The writing is on the wall, literally, and it's graffiti. And what it's saying is, there's going to be less interest in providing services and security. There's going to be less effective management of policing. And there's a lot of vulnerability in a political environment like we have right now toward violence, toward chaos, power outages, people getting broke. I mean, look around. Water. Everything. Just look around and think, what is the point where people who've maybe made a good living and maybe they don't really need to be in the city, or maybe they're remote workers, or maybe they want an alternative fallback. Maybe I'm a business person and I've got a warehouse in a sketchy area in town, and I'm going, you know what? The way the situation's going and that network and that neighborhood's going, I want an alternative warehouse on the highway out here in Lone Jack or whatever. A lot of opportunities. And it's going to happen one way or the other that people are going to flow to these communities and the money's going to flow to these communities and things. So to go in there more purposefully and help them create that, that's another thing I'm working on. Through an organization I started called Great Towns USA. And then other than that, I've got some consulting with restaurants, bars still, and banks.
Still doing the bank stuff?
Still doing bank stuff.
And restaurants are having a go right now.
Restaurants are having a go, and it's not a very good thing to be a restaurant consultant. It's not a good business model. That's why I don't do much of it, because the problem is it's so chaotic. And if people are still surviving and the doors are open, they don't think they need any consultation because they think they have all the answers. And once they realize, oh man, I got problems, I got to get a consultant who's been down this road. By the time that they realize that and call you, it's too late. They're not paying their taxes.
We lost 2 restaurants in Westport in the last month.
Yeah. I mean, you want to go to them and go, did you pay your taxes? 9 out of 10 times they'll be like, well, no.
Oh, really?
It's like, I can't work with you because
I don't want to go down with you.
It's gotten too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and with COVID, and which is the grand excuse of all things. You saw what that did to that neighborhood down the street here in Westport. It was creepy.
Yeah.
Creepy. Night of the Living Dead.
But you said it, with the small town, because I said it around the beginning of COVID. I could very easily see myself moving to Chillicothe.
Exactly.
Turning off this smartphone.
Yep.
And getting a job at the local Casey's.
Yep.
And taking it easy. Find me, give me I'm single, get a country girl who's maybe got a couple kids, and get a built-in family, and have a good life, and not worry about the rest of it. Because I worry a lot about the rest of it. And that's what keeps me going, as you kind of know. You know my kind a little bit. So I'd have a hard time truly doing that, but man, is that tempting.
Well, Michael, I think it's time for you and Uncle Loy to get in the car and head out to the small town USA. See if we can find us a couple country gals.
You pick the long weekend and I'm there.
Go to those diners.
I'm there.
Man, oh man, of Shevitz.
Can't have a better wingman than Loy Edge.
You can smoke in the bars there too.
Yeah, you can smoke in Riverside, I think.
Yeah.
You don't have to go far to smoke a cigarette at
Yeah.
doors.
We could get jobs at the Red X. But if you think about it, man, if you worked at the Red X with your employee discount, cigarettes and fireworks would be like free. It'd be like paying you to take that stuff.
And all your friends work there.
Yeah. Hell, I'm in.
Wife probably works there too. See, this sounds really good.
This is brainstorming, my man. This is what we always used to do in the ad business. Solve problems.
I could talk to you all day, Loy. I'm going to
people are probably thinking, well, you already have. Get this bum off of here. Wind it up, boys.
I'm going to tie it up unless you want to say anything else.
I don't want to get into anything else. I think we'll just leave this minefield where it lies.
I'm going to take you up on that country, on that small town road trip.
Until that day, Michael, until that day.
All right. Well, Loy, this was awesome.
Great to see you.
Loved seeing you, man.
Great being here at where it all started. All the magic happens.
Yeah, since 1975.
Still roaring.
You know it.
The little agency.
Thank you for my logo. You and my father.
Thank you for being you.
I don't want to exclude him. Well,
thanks for keeping this baby rolling.
It's what I live for.
It's nice to come back home.
Thank you for saying that, man. Well, let me shake your hand and give you a hug. Let's get out of here.
All right. Nice to have you.
Love you,
nice
Loy.
to be here, I mean. Ciao.
Always. Thanks for listening to the Little Agency That Roars podcast. Be sure to find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on FasonePartners.com under podcast. Be sure to subscribe, be sure to like, and leave a review. If you want to submit an interview or submit yourself for an interview, please email roar@FasonePartners.com. That's ROAR @FasonePartners.com. Thanks.